Welcome to the Puzzle People Pod. We're here today with a woman who needs no introduction in the puzzle community, KarenPuzzles. Our conversation today is on making content and all the work most people don't see. Welcome to the podcast, Karen.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So before we start, I want to just talk about what puzzles we're going to be working on. I'm doing this little Ordinary Habit soft touch puzzle, and it's like a Christmas puzzle at Rockefeller. It's 100 pieces, and I'm excited to dive in. Karen, what are you working on?
I grabbed a bunch of these little mini puzzles from Happily Puzzles. So this one is called Cookbooks. It's only 100 pieces, so I have a couple more that I can get to if I finish this one.
I'm fresh out of puzzles, continuing to bring no puzzles to the table.
Well, I have a good question before we start, because Karen is a bit of a puzzle expert, and I want to know if when you open your puzzle and you have like these freebie pieces, if this is fair game, or if you specifically break them all up so that way you can know that you put every single piece together. What are the thoughts?
Okay, so it depends on what situation you're in. If it is a speed puzzling competition, you always leave them together. If I'm just doing a puzzle for fun, or if it's for a video, I'll usually take them apart unless it is a very, rare or very special vintage puzzle. Then I'll leave it together to preserve as much as I can of the vintage puzzle.
You heard it here first. These are the rules I'm now bringing into my life. So let's start. Let's go back to sort of making content. How long have you been making content? I remember Valentina, I met her, she's with you at Nationals, and she said that you started with DIY and then moved to puzzles. So can you tell us a little bit about your history?
Yeah, so I started my YouTube channel in 2008. I was a freshman in college, and I actually didn't start with DIY. I started with being a part of the Harry Potter community online, and then I would go to like Harry Potter conferences. And the Harry Potter community really kind of led into the early YouTube community. John and Hank Green were some of the very first YouTubers that I watched. So I started my channel very, very early on in YouTube. Like no one was doing this as a job. There was no real way to make money from it at that point, but I just really loved the community. So I kept doing it, and all of my jobs that I've ever had have been somehow connected to YouTube. I did do DIY videos for about like 10 years. I worked for HGTV, and so I did videos for them. Eventually around, it would have been like 2017, 2018, I was starting to get a little bit burnt out on DIY. I felt like I had made every project I could possibly make. So I started doing puzzle videos just for fun, just as a little side project, just because I felt like I had, some interesting things to say about puzzles that no one was really talking about on YouTube. Like there were a couple time-lapse videos, but not really any like talking videos about puzzles. So I started doing that just as a side project. And for a couple of years, that's all it was. And then during COVID, puzzles really took off, and suddenly the channel took off. And I was like, oh, I think this could really be something. And again, as I said, I was kind of getting to the end of my time wanting to do the DIY content. So I left that job doing the DIY videos, and that was my last like external extra job. And so now I've just been doing the puzzle videos full time for a couple of years now.
Several people we have met, like we would say, hey, how did you find speed puzzling? And so many people have said, well, I saw KarenPuzzles coverage on Nationals or Worlds, and it got me really intrigued. So I think before we start, I'm curious, how do you feel about being a semi like celebrity in this like niche community? Is this something that you're used to? Because I've seen you at these events and you're down to earth, you do these events, but you're also a community member. You have friends, you have people that you puzzle with. So what has that been like?
Yeah, it's definitely been interesting. I feel that, I mean, I started my channel before I really knew about speed puzzling or before it had really taken off online the way that it did over COVID. Um, so from the beginning, like the speed puzzling community and the puzzle community wasn't necessarily my focus just because I didn't know that there was a community or that there could be a community. Um, Eventually, as speedpuzzling.com really took off and people really gravitated towards this, um, the community kind of became a little bit more, what's the word? I don't know, became more of a thing, more of a community. My first in-person event was Nationals 2022 down in San Diego, which was so fun. It was the first time I had met most of the puzzlers in person. I knew Tammy beforehand, but most of the people that, I became friends with, I met for the first time at Nationals. And it was just amazing to like be around so many people who have this same interest as me, which for pretty much all of my life up until that point had been a very solitary interest. People knew that I liked puzzles, but I didn't really know anyone who was as into it as I was. So to meet all of those people was, yeah, it was just amazing, and it really gave me the drive to keep going with this. I also do feel like having the speed puzzling, like the structure of the competition, also really helped to solidify the community because you have all this data, you have things that you can work towards and specific goals that you can work towards. I think if we were all just getting together and puzzling for fun without any specific goal or competition, it wouldn't necessarily be what it's become. As for people knowing me at these events, I mean, it's to be expected because I'm the one who has put myself out there and made myself sort of the ambassador of this small community out to the world. I know there are a lot of people who watch the videos who have either no interest in actually puzzling or no interest in speed puzzling and don't want to go to the events, but they just like sort of peeking in. And so I guess all I can do is hope that I've, presented the community in a respectful and engaging way. It's always a little more stressful when I'm doing a video that has so many different people in it, as opposed to the ones where it's just me here in the studio. I want to make sure I'm always presenting everyone else in a good way.
Did you have any professional training, or has your experience making these videos been self-taught?
It's been mostly self-taught. I went to a high school that was like arts focused, so I was learning video editing from the point where I was a freshman in high school. But at the time, we were on Final Cut, I believe, but we were still on mini DV tapes. This would have been 2003, 2004. So the technology is not where it is now. So this was very early, just, learning the very basics of how to, transfer DV tapes, which is knowledge that we don't need anymore. And then just the very basics of cutting a video together. Then in college, I actually did take some video classes, but I was a graphic design major. So my video classes were just kind of a side thing. So I did learn the basics there, but it's mostly just been from, making almost weekly videos for, since 2008. So I feel like I've just gotten better and better, and the projects have gotten more and more complicated as I've gone through, just from having that repetition of having edited so many videos.
How many hours goes into a typical video? And I think we can break this up because you have two kind of different videos on your channel. You have the ones which is you doing a puzzle, maybe sometimes that has some history involved. And so you talk us through the sort of vintage puzzle, the history, that kind of thing. You obviously have other kind of puzzle videos, but then you also have the competition videos, which I imagine are a bear to edit, especially because, you're taking the live stream, the footage that you have, and all of the other people. So what does that look like for each video? Like, what is that process?
Yeah, so I'll start with the ones that I do just here in the studio. Those are more simple, but still not necessarily simple. It starts with doing as much research as I want to do ahead of time. Sometimes I prefer to leave the puzzling as more of a surprise, and then I do more of the research later. But sometimes I do the research ahead of time. Then, I come in here and I film. Usually, the puzzles that I do are usually fairly complicated. So it might be 2 or 3 days. The first day I'm doing the intro and all of the photos and the videos to make sure I have everything that I need of the puzzle not put together. Because after I put it together, I'm not going to bring it back to that state again. So I really need to make sure that I get enough coverage for anything that I might need. So that takes quite a while before I even start solving the puzzle. Then I film what you see in the videos. I don't typically cut a lot. I mean, sometimes I'll cut stuff, but compared to, I think, other types of, documentary videos out there, I feel like I use most of what I film because I'm sort of building the video in my head as I go. Since I'm the one editing it, I kind of know exactly what shots I'm going to need. So doing the actual puzzle is actually the best part, the most fun part, and the easiest part because, after I get the close-up shots that I need and I'm just doing a time lapse, that's very easy. I can just throw on a podcast and puzzle for as long as I feel like I need to get, to the next breaking point where I want to talk to the camera. After I finish the puzzle, then I usually take a day to edit everything that I've already shot. And then I can write my outro and write all of my final thoughts once I can see how it's portrayed already in the beginning part of the video. And so then, a day or two later, come in, film the outro and all of the beauty shots. And all of those final beauty shots are usually like what I procrastinate on the most because you need it for the video, but I feel like it's just not the most interesting thing to film. And, again, I want to make sure that I have all of the coverage that I need for when I then go and edit. So then the editing takes, I mean, depending on how complicated the video is, a couple days. I go through it. If there's a sponsor, I'll have to send over the sponsor segment to get approved. And and then there's also the thumbnail, which I spend a lot of time on, the Instagram photos, any social videos if I'm doing those. So it's kind of a long process. There's a lot of different stuff that goes into it.
This might be a weird question, but like how many hours would you say goes into a video like that? And then we'll talk a little bit about the competition ones because I can tell those take a lot more time.
hmm I try not to think about it. It is a full-time job. This is all that I do. And so if a video takes, um, it's usually a little more than a week. Um, I don't know. I don't actually keep track of the hours because I think it would make me a little depressed to look at how much time it actually takes.
Part of the reason I ask is just because, I mean, obviously, we're both working in sort of a similar format with media, and I think that we live in a world where we're just inundated with content, and sometimes people forget that there's an individual behind the screen who's actually putting in the time and effort. And I love that you post kind of updates. I saw you did it recently for your Worlds video about where you're at, why it's taking perhaps as long as it's taking, because I don't think that most people have a good education on kind of what it takes to create a video. And I mean, obviously, like there's a difference between taking a video where you just film and you pop it up. That takes 2 seconds. But something that really struck me when we were first, exploring the community and looking at all the different people and your channel was, I can tell that you put a lot of time, energy, effort, and care into what you're doing, and that takes time. So that's where the motivation for this question is. I just want people to understand how much work you do and how much goes into one of your videos. So if you want, we can talk a little bit about the the world's video that you're currently making, because I can tell that's probably fresh on your mind right now. So can you share a little bit about like how many cameras you're working with, how many tracks, and how long that's been taking?
Yeah, so I got back from my world's trip about 3 weeks ago now, I think. And the first week, I was pretty much just syncing everything up and seeing what I had. So, downloading, I get the links to the actual live stream files sent to me from the organizers, so I can just download those, bring them into Premiere. That's really the base track that I work off of. Then I take Valentina's footage, which has, her main camera and then audio, although I really only use her audio for the cheers that are happening and then for pairs and teams if you want to hear what people are saying to each other. So what I have her do, and what I do as well when I'm filming competitions, is either at the beginning or the end of every single shot, you either start or end on the live stream that's happening in the room. So you can see the actual time of the live stream, and then you pan down and shoot whatever you want to shoot. That way, when I'm editing, I can just look at those times to sync up exactly when her footage is happening compared to the live streams. So I go through, I get all of her footage synced up with it. For the rounds that I'm not in, at least for Worlds, I was also shooting on my phone. So I took some of that footage, synced that up as well onto another track. Then for the rounds that I am in, I have my overhead camera of, the entire solve. And so I also have to bring that in and sync that up. And then I also, for this one, have my own timer graphic that I think looks nicer than the one that was burned into the live stream. So I have to sync that up as well. So once I have all of that, the next thing that I do is I can do these next two steps in either order, but I have to listen to all of the live streams, which was 35 hours. I listened to it on 2x speed while I was working on a diamond painting. And I would, anytime I heard a little sound bite that I thought I might want to use in the video, I would lean over and I would make that part of the video purple. I would color code it so I could find it easily later. Also, something that I did before this is Premiere has a tool that automatically adds a cut anytime that the camera cuts. So I don't have to go in and do that manually. I can just hit a button and then it cuts it up into all the different shots. So, okay, so once I'm listening through all of them, and I'm also going through all of the footage, both the live stream footage and Valentina's footage. I'm assigning a color to each person that I want to follow. So for this one, I just made the first place person blue, the second place person was orange, etc. And so then I go through, and anytime there's a shot of that person, I color code that clip for what it needs to be. So then when I'm editing, I can just visually see when I have shots of each person. So once I have that done, then I can actually start editing. So what I do is I just, look at the footage. I have a Google Doc open. So I write what I think my voiceover is going to be. I bring in the footage that I want into my actual, video timeline. And then I record a temporary voiceover of me just saying it out loud, just using the computer microphone, just so I have the timing and so I can hear what it sounds like said out loud in my voice. And sometimes I'll, change a few words here or there. And then I can edit on top of that. So that's pretty much the point that I'm at right now when we're recording this. After I have that done for the entire video, then I'll go back and record the real voiceovers on my real camera, bring that in. Also in the initial edit, I'm bringing in the music for any of the montages. So I'll have to go through and do all of the audio levels, make sure everything, nothing is too loud or too quiet. And yeah, add all the graphics. Oh yeah, that was at the beginning, before I would even do any of that, I also made all of the charts so that I would know what final data and final results I was working towards.
That is a lot of work, but I also think it really shows with the videos that I've seen to date, and it makes a lot of sense. Thank you for sharing your process with us. I think this is, if somebody is out there who's thinking about editing a video like this or is even just curious, I mean, I think this provides a lot of context. So thank you for sharing that.
How often do you look at like the viewer data? Does that inform a lot of your decisions for future projects?
You mean like the YouTube analytics?
Yeah.
I try not to look too much. I mean, I kind of just make what I want to make and what I think people will like. I look at the view counts, obviously, but yeah, I mean, I feel like I have such a long list of videos. It's more about either what I have to make for whatever sponsorship, what's the word? Um, like whatever sponsorships I've agreed to, those will have a specific time frame where they need to go up, or it's just whatever is most inspiring and exciting to me at that moment.
So after you've poured all this time and effort into these videos, what happens to it? Like, what's the posting process like?
Well, after I have finished editing, I actually have to go back and watch the entire video multiple times, just making, tiny little changes that probably no one would ever notice or care about. But I just want to make sure that since, once it's out there, I can't really make those changes anymore. I want to make sure I'm putting out something that I'm happy to live out there on the internet forever. Um, so once I've done that and I have the video file that I'm happy with, I upload it and, um, on the published day, it goes up at a certain time. I post on Instagram that the video is up. I spend a couple hours, looking at the comments, making sure there's nothing crazy that needs to be fixed right away, making sure that people like it. And yeah, then it just lives online and people can always come back and watch it anytime they want.
So you do read the comments, because I know that some people are like, I don't want to read the comments, or they have moderators who read the comments. But are you your team, or do you have people helping you with this?
No, it's just me. I don't have a team. I don't have any other employees. My sister sometimes helps me with some of the charts for the competition videos because she's better with Google Sheets and spreadsheets than I am. But in terms of comments, what I've done is so on YouTube, you can blacklist certain words. And so any comment that has one of those words in it automatically goes into another folder called Held for Review. I have blacklisted so many words. At this point, the comments are mostly nice and fine, and most of the ones that aren't nice are so far on the other end of the spectrum that I can just delete it and move on and it doesn't bother me. I actually don't really dive into the Held for Review folder very often, and I'm sure there are some nice and good comments that accidentally get caught in there, which is something that I just, can't really help. But yeah, for the most part, the comments that I see are all really nice and supportive. I think it helps that my content is not very controversial. I try to stay as uncontroversial as possible.
Yes, and we've met a lot of puzzlers too, and I feel like this community is just really kind. So it's hard for me to think about a lot of trolls in the puzzle community. I think to that point, you obviously have a really impressive audience on YouTube. How long did it take for you to build that?
It took a couple years. I mean, from the beginning, I had my old DIY channel, so my initial audience came over from there. But at the very beginning, I remember being like, my goal at the very beginning was to get 1,000 views in the first day, which now is like so far in the past. But um, but yeah, at the beginning, it was just kind of a small channel. I was only getting a couple thousand views. During COVID, when some of the videos really started taking off, I actually did go back and deleted some of the underperforming videos and moved those just over to Patreon. I also changed a lot of my titles and thumbnails to make them a little more clickable. And then as I got into this groove and I sort of learned what the best structure for these videos should be, I think it just kept growing and growing. But yeah, that was from like 2018 to now in 2024. So it's been about 6 years of growth.
While you've been posting consistently on YouTube, have you felt any pressure to create more content for other platforms, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, etc.?
Yeah, not necessarily Twitch. I've just never really wanted to live stream, but definitely short videos on TikTok and Instagram. I feel like with those types of videos, it is so much more of a lottery. On YouTube, I can kind of expect about how many views I'm going to get. Obviously, some videos underperform and some do better than I expected, but the usual range is pretty predictable. On TikTok, you can upload something that you think is going to do really great, and then it gets 1,000 views, which, pays nothing basically on TikTok. Or you can upload something and it'll get 40 million views. So you just never really know. I mean, you can sort of, obviously make things that you think will work for that platform, but I feel like it's much more of a chance of whether you're gonna get nothing from it or you're gonna, really go super viral, which has its own challenges when you're reaching people outside of your usual community. Obviously, the types of comments that you get will change. So I definitely have felt pressure to keep trying to hit those huge views over and over again. And it is demoralizing when you spend a lot of time on some short videos and then they just don't really hit as much as you thought they would. And so that's why I try to prioritize YouTube. Also, the YouTube AdSense program is much more consistent. And I also just have a lot to say about puzzles. So I just prefer long form content where I can share everything that I want to share.
That makes a lot of sense. I know you have a Patreon. You talked about that before. What do you like about that platform? And have there been challenges when it comes to introducing paid content to your audience?
Yeah, so this is going to sound a little counterintuitive, but what I really like about my Patreon is the fact that it doesn't get a lot of views. The videos that I post on there get under 1,000 views, which these days is so nice because it means I can just make things without feeling the pressure of being judged by, thousands and thousands of people who all want to weigh in with their own opinions, which can get a little, it can be a little much sometimes. So I really like having the Patreon where the only people who are there are the people who have paid. It only costs $3 to be part of my Patreon, and I don't have tiers. So anyone who pays $3 can go in there and watch everything. But that is a fairly self-selecting group of people because most people don't want to go through the effort of setting that up and paying any money at all. So yeah, I just really like having a place where I can reach just the people who I know are supportive of me and taking what I do in good faith. And yeah, having a little less pressure about what I'm making and what I'm putting out there.
What do you wish people knew about your process that they might not, besides all the things you listed out?
I guess just that for the really long videos, just imagine me having to watch those videos like 5 times in a row. Just looking for any little minutia that I want to adjust. I might make a 45, 50-minute video, and then a few days before it goes up, I'm just sitting on my couch watching that 50-minute video 5 times in one day, which takes a lot of time. That takes all day to do that and also to export it each time. So yeah, for all the long videos that I make, I hope people can just appreciate all of the time that goes into just perfecting them at the very end.
I know we definitely appreciate that. Our first feature film we ended up watching over 50 times has to be. Some people are like, "Why don't you want to come see your film with me?" And it's like, I've seen it so many times that you can watch it. I'll join you later.
I know, I feel like I can practically recite every single video at the end of editing each one.
As you look to the future, do you see yourself continuing to make videos, or is there a pivot that you're hoping to make?
No, I mean, I really like being able to connect with people in this way. And I think it's something that just works with my lifestyle, I guess, just always preferring to work on projects alone in my own space. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't think I'll be doing it my entire life, but I don't really see an end point that's coming up, anytime soon.
Is there something that you would like people to know about Karen Puzzles, the competitor, versus Karen Puzzles, the YouTube personality?
But you mean like this speed puzzling competitor?
Yeah, like I don't know. Is there something that do you have goals for yourself that you've set in speed puzzling that you want to share? Are there events that you're looking forward to? Are there things that you're hoping to also do in that space beyond, your YouTube space?
I'm not sure. I mean, after this world cycle, I'm planning to take a little bit of a break from the speed puzzling content and get back to the vintage puzzle content, maybe do another giant puzzle. I think those are actually, I want the speed puzzling content to exist for to have a record of it for the future. Um, because I think this is a really exciting time when the community is just growing really quickly. But what I'm actually most passionate about is like the research of the vintage puzzles. So I'm really excited next year to get back to that.
Are there other competitions you've gone to already that you've done just for fun that you haven't filmed?
Yeah, I mean, going back to the Patreon, all of the local competitions that I do, like there's a bunch that happen down in Orange County. Those I film, but just for Patreon and for, an Instagram post or two. So again, that's like, filming a lot more casually. The videos are much more or are much lower effort to put together. They're much simpler. So those I feel like are, you know, leaning towards doing it just for fun. But I think I'm, this coming year planning to do a lot more where, yeah, I'm not really trying to win or to place. I just want to go and have fun and do some puzzles.
Are there, I know you mentioned your YouTube channel started with sort of different themes or different sort of areas of interest. Is there another area of interest on the horizon that you could see yourself filming or deep diving into another community of some sort?
I don't know. I think it's more just pivoting more towards the vintage puzzles because that's really what I feel excited about. I think there's still so much within the puzzle world to explore. I think I've done quite a lot. Some might say too much, but probably a good amount on the speed puzzling. But I have a list of video topics like a mile long, so there's still so much puzzle content to make.
I was gonna say I love that you're going to do more vintage puzzle content because I can tell I watched your this puzzle is designed to make you dizzy. It's like one of my favorite videos of yours. And I can tell that you have such a connection with the vintage puzzles. I love learning about the artist and the history. And I think it makes sense too, because you said you have a graphic design, you went to school for graphic design. So bringing that in. And I wanted to ask kind of graphic design, Karen, is there something you think that makes a puzzle really great from that standpoint? Because you have that kind of level of expertise as well.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of puzzles um that I just do for fun, which are easier puzzles, which might not have anything, unique about them that I could fill an entire video with. But the ones that I like to do just for fun are really bright, colorful puzzles, easy ones that have big, distinct sections of color. One of the things I've been saying since I started this channel is that when I do a puzzle, if I'm going to be looking at it for hours at a time, I want it to be colors and images that I like to look at. So, yeah, when I'm, deciding what to do outside of what I think is clickable and interesting for a video, it's always just easy and colorful puzzles.
That makes sense. I think, it's for me, I have to say, I've really enjoyed doing puzzles that have good feel to them. I don't know how else to explain that. Like the Ordinary Habit one that I just did, it says soft touch. And like, that's like a really great part of sort of the sensory puzzle experience. And it sounds like for you, it's bright colors. And I'm curious if you have any favorite puzzle brands you want to shout out. I know you work with Ravensburger a lot. Obviously, they're huge in the puzzle community. Are there smaller brands or brands that people may not know about, or even sort of an era in the vintage puzzle timeline that you think people should love and check out?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, for the vintage puzzles, the most popular ones out there are the Springboks because they were just so well made. I also really enjoy the Eaton puzzles, which are pretty similar to the Springboks. Um, for modern puzzles, I do a lot of Ebu because they just send me like 10 puzzles every quarter. So I just always have more of them to do. And as I do them, I give them away at puzzle swaps. I also love Les Puz. I love their branding. I love the images they come up with. I really like piecework puzzles. They do all of their own in-house photography. And I really, again, like the images that they make. I'm also a big fan of Soonness, who, to be clear, gifts me all of her puzzles, and they're fairly expensive, but they're very high quality, and the images are just so beautiful.
Awesome. Okay, my last question before we say goodbye. So I love the giant puzzle videos that you do too. I think I watched a Pokemon one. Um, how, I guess, like, how strenuous is that? And do you have a stretching routine that you would recommend to people? Because I felt after watching that, my back hurt, and I obviously wasn't even doing it. So let us know, how do you keep your body in shape when you're doing so many puzzles? Are there any tips and tricks there that you can share with us?
Well, so early on in the channel, I had been going to a gym and seeing a trainer who would force me to work out and stay in shape. That ended over COVID. So these days, I do very little, and I feel like it's going to catch up to me very soon. I like walking. I like going outside for a walk. I feel like anytime I take a break from the puzzling or the editing and I'm just up and moving my body, then suddenly all of that soreness goes away. So I need to do that a little more. There's just so much editing. I feel like I get more sore just from sitting and editing for so long, more so than sitting and puzzling.
Yeah, I feel you there. My heart goes out to you. We love the work you do, Karen. And thank you so much for joining us on the Puzzle People Pod. If you enjoyed this episode, we hope you'll share it with your friends. You can find us on Instagram at Puzzle People Doc. Karen, do you want to share your links, even though I know everybody knows who you are?
Yeah, you can find me on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. If you just look up Karen Puzzles, then you'll find me. Also, I'm just about to finish my second puzzle. I have 2 pieces left. So hang on, don't end. Okay, I finished it.
Amazing.
I did it.
That's great. And if you know someone who you think would make a great guest, please reach out to us. You can reach us at ben@chickenwingpictures.com.